Okay, don't hate me. I'm just getting it out there. I'm not the biggest Bill Murray fan in the world. I don't hate him or anything, but, Ghostbusters, things like that. Not a lot of nostalgia there. Didn't really see it when I was younger. I've just now come in and watched it a bit later on. So completely seeing this film on its own two legs, not doing him any favours. I just want to see how this holds up in its own little bubble. So, Lost in Translation, mid-2000s, sort of quirky romantic comedy, more the kind of romantic comedy that, like Eternal Sunshine is, and films like that, rather than not Love Actually or any of that kind of realm of romantic comedies. Sort of psychological elements, kind of philosophical. It's asking lots of questions. So it's a bit different from what you get with anything with like Jude Law in it. Two main characters, Bill Murray, Scarlett Johansson. They're in their own places in life. They have a lot of uncertainty that leads them together. And then we have a film. So, Bill Murray. They're both in Tokyo. Bill Murray's in Tokyo because he's a famous actor, like in real life. And he's going to do a whiskey advert, which he is being paid $2 million for. Okay? Scarlett Johansson is married, and she's been married to her husband for 2 years. And he's like a photographer or some whatever. They're both in there for work, basically, except Scarlett Johansson. But the men are there for work. Scarlett Johansson, 2 years into a marriage, kind of disillusioned, kind of young. She was actually like 18 when they made this, but she's playing someone who's 20. Not much of a difference. But Bill Murray, he's like 50 odd, 60 odd, whatever, 30 years into his marriage. Seems to hate everything and is super depressed, even though he has tons of money, whatever. And he's in Tokyo getting paid to drink whiskey and kind of grimace a bit at the camera. So, good for him. The main thing that connects them is that they don't know what they're doing, really. And that's kind of the central theme of the film, that you have these characters who just can't communicate with each other, and maybe they're now stuck in certain parts of their life, surrounded by people that they can't communicate with. And then they find someone, Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson in each other, they find someone that they can finally communicate with. But even in that, there's this kind of hidden trap of navigating all of these kind of societal barriers and norms and all of this just hanging on crap from their life that's kind of standing in the way of them actually kind of forming a closer connection. Bill Murray's got a 30-year marriage. He can't communicate with his wife. She keeps faxing him stuff to choose. I think it was like carpets and just random stuff that she just keeps sending him. And he doesn't care. He can't communicate with that, so he just keeps ignoring it. And she keeps faxing him textiles and like want him to make choices and things. Scarlett Johansson initially has no agency. She just kind of sits around the hotel room, not doing much while her husband's out working. She's not even out like getting Starbucks or whatever. Maybe they didn't have Starbucks in 2003, I'm not sure. She's not out there doing anything really until she kind of gets strung along on the arm of Bill Murray an hour later. So they're both a little bit in their headspace. They don't know what they're doing, and they happen to just bump into each other at the hotel. So they get chatting. But then pretty quickly, you get the complications of the other bits and pieces. So Bill Murray, his wife, obviously keeps messaging him. And, he doesn't want to... He's very... Early on, he's presented as sort of caring about his marriage because he's, brought up to this room by an escort who he kind of awkwardly shrugs off despite her kind of climbing all over him. He just kind of pushes her away and it's very like awkward about it. Scarlett Johansson, she's just bumbling around following... It's the weird plastic melting guy from Friends is her husband. He bumps into his like old ex-work colleague / probably ex-girlfriend / ex-fling thing. And they clearly have a way better time together than him and Scarlett Johansson, who's just like moping around. There's just nothing there. But he essentially disappears with this other ex-girlfriend character for the rest of the film. And whatever they're doing, who cares? That's just their own thing. Bill Murray eventually gravitates towards Scarlett Johansson after they've bumped into each other a few times in the hotel in what's pretty awkward at the beginning, pretty awkward meeting, but it kind of flows sort of naturally from there, despite some issues that I'll get into in a moment. It's a bit weird how she goes to see him. She kind of gets up and just leaves her whole crew that she's with and just kind of makes eyes with Bill Murray across the lobby in the hotel, and she just goes down and sits and starts talking to him. And then, over like the next day or so, they have a couple kind of chance interactions at the bar and things like that. And it's fine. She's a bit clueless. She makes like a really tame Porsche joke about midlife crises and says, "Oh, but have you got a Porsche yet?" Like, Bill Murray's just told her he made $2 million on a weekend in Tokyo shooting a whiskey advert. Like, he probably has like 10 Ferraris, and she's like, "Oh, I bet you got a Porsche now, didn't you? Because that's what men do when they're 50 and getting old." Like, this guy's already done that. He probably did that 15 years ago. Like, his whole life is that Porsche fantasy mindset. He just buys things, that's what he does. So that was a bit weird, but overall their relationship does start to come together, and you can kind of see why they kind of fit together as people. Other things I really like about the film, the setting is cool. I'd never been to Japan. I'll have to ask my friends who have been to Japan, but it feels like a real city. It actually feels like a holiday, or maybe not a great holiday because you spend so much time in the hotel, but we really do see the inside of the hotel. And there's also this really cool sequence where they're kind of just running through the city, and I think there was karaoke, and they go to like sushi and stuff, like all of that. They just run around and do crazy stuff and party. That was nice. That felt fairly genuine, and that was pretty exciting. That was cool. The jet lag was represented pretty well, and they really kind of hammer the point home. Bill Murray keeps like waking up like 3 or 4 times, I think, at like 2 in the morning or whatever. It's not just once as like a token thing. Like, they're really making a point there about how just kind of physically like disconnected he is from everything that's going on around him. And that was nice that they actually paid attention to that. Overall, I think the acting is fine. Scarlett Johansson is pretty good. Like, she's better than she was in 8-Legged Freaks, which was, I guess, maybe like 4 or 5 years before. She was pretty young in that. I think she was 18 in this. But a bit of a step up. Obviously a very different kind of film with different kind of direction. She, for the most part, holds her own, and I think any kind of weakness with her is more to do with the way that the character's written, not so much her acting. Bill Murray is kind of like someone's lost granddad. He just has this vibe throughout the whole film that he doesn't want to be there, which on one sense is great because it's the point of the film, right? It's his character that he just is lost and can't, connect with anything around him, and he just feels no sense of purpose, and he's so detached from everything. I feel like maybe he just kind of kept that vibe going through as like a flat line through the whole film, and when it maybe he could have had a little bit more fun with it, there are just some parts where it felt like this should be kind of building to something now. He needs to have a bit more kind of emotional weight, a bit more engagement with what's going on emotionally, and he's just kind of deadpan pretty much the whole time until he's trying to be funny, Bill Murray, and then he just goes into like racial stereotypes, which is just weird and really dated. But yeah, he just kind of keeps that up the whole way through the film. I pretty much like the way it presented the dysfunctionality of life and communication in general. Like, I like how you have these two characters that you understand what they're, you understand the position that they're in. Like, you might think they're both a bit kind of silly, that they feel like they don't really have any kind of agency or impact on their life. They're just kind of flung to the wind, and they're not really kind of taking any responsibility maybe for what's going on. But you at least get the sense that they're these two kind of like weird kite people that are just blustering around in the wind and just kind of like banging into each other in this like big storm of just kind of awkwardness and bumbling. But at least you got that. You understood that. There's a few things that don't work so well, or just, have aged pretty badly. It's kind of sexist and weird. Anything post Me Too movement, post Harvey Weinstein, I just feel more sensitive to this in films anyway. But the opening shot is just her, Scarlett Johansson's ass for like a minute or whatever. And is it necessary? Maybe. Does it make a point? Sure, I guess. But could we have made a different point? Could we have not just opened on like Bill Murray's gormless face while he was like asleep or something like that? Like, I feel like we would have got the same point, right? It's just people sleeping. It's just, this is a person. We get it. Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could be arguing that it's supposed to actually be a non-sexual ass because it's just someone sleeping, which is fine. except that Scarlett Johansson's like 18, and this is like a huge Hollywood film which is being shown to millions of people. So there's this kind of inherent presentative element in just kind of thrusting this thing out there and going, look at Scarlett Johansson's ass, and that's a bit weird, especially given kind of the way that things are now, the way that we kind of approach certain things and view things. As I said earlier, there's some weird racism jokes. That's just a product of his time. It's like 15 years ago, I guess. And Bill Murray, who's like an old man, so sure, whatever. He's gonna make some weird jokes. There's the whole, oh, they spoke for 2 minutes and then it really was translated to being one line. Aha, what? How funny. And they do this like 4 times. Great. And then they go to like a bar later on and Bill Murray's just making some weird off-color jokes. I can't remember exactly what he says, but it's just odd. The main elephant in the room is obviously the age gap. Really weird. Bill Murray's like 60, Scarlett Johansson's 18, and I get it. I get the point of the film where they're saying, you know, this age is just a number, and or you know, people can get lost and they can go through their whole lives without finding the person that they're really kind of connected to, and then they finally do connect with somebody, but then there's all of this baggage and limitations in the way, like they can't really have a life together. It's pretty much fairy tale stuff if they were both like 20. If they were both 20, they were both single and they met each other and they had that kind of like lightning in a bottle connection, amazing. You know, that's like classic fairy tale love at first sight kind of storytelling. But the point obviously being that he's like some old man and she's 18, so they can't, you know, it's just wrong. It's not going to work. They're going to be together for like 10 years and he's going to have a heart attack, or he's going to take advantage of her because he's got 40 years more maturity than she does, and it's really just ugh. But they really kind of try to make it work, and every time you see Bill Murray like smooching up close to her, or when he's going out drinking with them, he just looks like someone's dad who's just like the cool dad because he still gets drunk and he just shows up and is binge drinking or whatever, and that's just weird. It's too much, and the whole time you're just watching it and you're just disconnected because you're like, Bill Murray is too old. Bill Murray is too old. Like, Bill Murray once was a young man, I guess, but he has never looked like a young man. Him and John Hurt, they always look old. Like, watch any film with them in and you're like, wow, they look so old, and you look at the date and you're like, oh my gosh, he's 30 or whatever, and he just looks like a 50-year-old man. That's just unfortunate, but it's just his face, I guess. I don't know. And the ending is pretty good. And after I saw the ending, they do this kind of cheeky, ooh, what did he whisper? What did he whisper in her ear kind of ending. And, you know, ooh, what's he said? It's kind of like in Brick, if you've seen that, that's kind of got this whispery, like, ooh, what was said at the end kind of thing. It's not that much of a mystery, I think. You know, like, I went on Reddit, I went on Google or whatever, like, look up Reddit reviews after I watched it, and everyone's like, oh, what do you think he said? What do you think he said? And it just seems to be so obvious. If the intention is the thread that I've been reading into the whole rest of the film, which is just, it is essentially a film about people who've unfortunately connected with someone who is essentially their soulmate, but society is standing in their way, and all of these other kind of, you know, the unfortunate nature of him being like 40 years older than her, and taboos and all of this just stuff, and the kind of misfortune of it, that they're the people that have connected at that time, not someone who's within their own age range and in their own kind of country, or, you know, their own kind of place or whatever, their own setting. So that must have been what Bill Murray was saying, I think. Like, he's just gone to Scarlett Johansson, soz, I know you're young and impressionable and 20, but I'm kind of taking advantage of you a little bit because I probably had an experience like this maybe 30 years ago and didn't capitalize on it myself. So I can't put you through that. You need to now kind of live your own journey of where I was 40 years ago. Do your own thing. You'll find somebody else. You know, just get on Tinder. Not Tinder, obviously, because it's 2003, but just go and meet some more people. Break up with your husband because he's rubbish and you don't like him, and just go find somebody else. Or maybe hang around in Tokyo and find another, you know, slightly younger, rich person to just kind of latch onto. And, you know, you can both kind of pretend that you have something there that's worth pursuing. I don't know. That came out really harsh. It's not that bad. And then they kind of kiss and it's this bit there. But it's overall not a terrible film. Having not been to Tokyo, I liked that I got to see another country, and it felt fairly sincere in how it portrayed one aspect, obviously because it's just one city, of another country. The acting was fine and it was okay, but I probably wouldn't watch it again. I'll just look out for more Scarlett Johansson films because she's done much better stuff since then and she's good. I will probably steer clear of Bill Murray just because, I don't know. There was the one under the sea. It's like, is it Wes Anderson? Is it the Royal Tenenbaums? I don't remember. There's one where he's in a submarine. I'll probably watch that at some point, but not for Bill Murray if it's Wes Anderson. Unless it's the Coen brothers. In either case, I'm going to watch that film instead. Oh, if you didn't already, you should check out the podcast that I put out recently with my girlfriend. It's called the JK Podcast. We've done 1 episode so far, but more episodes coming in the future, definitely. So yeah, get on it. Go watch that. You don't have to watch the whole thing. We talked about lots of films, so, just skip to the films that you like, but hopefully you get something out of it. See you next time.